Alright, so here we are with a third tutorial or a third example of the landing page, this time built using the new Oxygen 2 page editor that replaces the theme altogether, by the way. So even if we don't use a landing page, you will have to create the heading and footer and so on. Just as an intro here, I just want to tell you how I've done this site. I know that sometimes it might be a little bit longer than with the other two, based on my previous experience. But I don't do, if you're a designer, sometimes you will simply, for example, if I come here, if I want to change that spacing here, I can just click and drag. And that's pretty easy and fast to do. Okay? I don't know if you can see on my bottom right, you have the margin top 72 pixels. So when I move that here, I can move that to have exactly the amount that I want. In my case, I want it to have 30 pixels. Personally, as you can see now, I have 29. So I'm the type of guy, I'm a developer, so I really like to be precise. And sometimes we can, like in this case, I want to have 30. Can be pretty quick to have 30, especially if you're good at it. Not necessarily my case. But since I want to be really precise, not 29, not 31, but really 30, I prefer to go inside of the panel here and do that manually right there. So if you don't do that, if you do it this way by clicking and dragging, of course it's going to be faster. So you can select any element and just drag it to insert some spacing. Okay, so let's say, for example, here, if I want to add some spacing, it's always possible to do so. Okay, on this particular case it didn't work because of other settings that I have, but anyway. So doing that, of course, will increase the site speed if you are not the site development speed, if you are used to do that, which is not my case. Another thing, you'll see me create a couple of CSS elements. We can do that in every page builder, but Oxygen is really more performant in that regard. First of all, because the classes that we create is for every page, not just the current one. And also, it is really, I believe it is really targeted for developers more than just designers. So it's easier to input some CSS, some JavaScript even, if we need so. So, for example, there was no option to put all my text, all my headings in capital letters. So, of course, I can come here and say uppercase for each and every one of them. But to go faster, I simply created a class, another class, but a selector to do that. And you're going to see how to do that in my video a little bit later on. But this is what I did. I created a class for all my headings. I'm using the 3 level of headings. So this is how I do that. Same thing for the width here, since I'm starting with the width with a box layout. And I don't know why the developer didn't think that it was a good idea to simply allow for, let's go back with that one, allow for adding some margin here. So he simply added the padding for the section, no margin. I don't know if he'll add that later on because I suggested it, but for now it's not the case. So if I don't have the section like that, you see that the image takes the entire width, even though the content doesn't. And there's no real way, since there's no margin here, to put an auto margin or something like that. There's no way to do that, even though I've set a page width somewhere else. So that's why I have created another class called section, and you're going to see how later on in the video. And in that section, I'm going to put a maximum width of 1200 pixel and the margin to be 0 auto, so that it is centered, because if not, of course, it will be aligned to the left. So you'll see that throughout this video tutorial, so don't be surprised. And in a couple of places, I'm also creating classes that you will probably, if you take the time to look at the video, you will probably say, well, why does it do that? Because in other page builder, I will simply create, for example, that column here, and when I duplicate it, everything is all right. But the problem with other page builder is if I want to come back and make some changes to something, then I need to do that 3 times or for each of the elements. Now, by using a class, which is also available on other builder, like I said, but way more complicated to do so, then by adding a class, it's going to be faster if I want to make some modifications. So there are some things that I know I'm going to need to modify to be able to work with tablet and mobile devices. For example, here the column, I know that I will need to change the border later on and so on. So instead of doing like in other builder where I need to change a border here, add a border here and remove the border at the top, for example, and have to do that on each of the three elements, I will be able to do so just by selecting the column itself, which has a class, and then modifying that class, and it will be applied for all the three elements at the same time. So for example here, if I want to, I don't know, change the width of, well, this is not a good idea, but let's say increase the padding here. Okay, well, 20 was the default one, so let's say 40. Sorry, I already have some negative margin on the heading here, so bad example. But anyway, let's say, let me give you a better example. Maybe change the background color just to do that fast. And you see it changes that everywhere because I'm using a class. So that's a different way of developing in Oxygen. Don't have necessarily to do everything and then duplicate it. I could create my three elements right away, though I do it the other way, but I could create my three elements and then simply modify the class, and it will be applied to all of them at the same time. In my particular case, I still do that the same way by doing just the first one, and then I duplicate for the next two, but it will still be profitable for later on when I come back to the tablet and mobile views. So, without further ado, let's dig into that. Okay, so here again, around 22 minutes. So of course, the more I do this layout, the more I know things by heart. So sometimes I don't necessarily need to do all the steps. So probably the first one with Thrive Architect would have been a little bit even faster if I would do this right now, for example. But anyway, it gives you an approximation that it's about the same speed as the other. Right now, it's the same speed as Thrive Architect. When I've done that previously, it was more 30 minutes and so on. So, of course, it depends on how comfortable you are with the software. But around the same thing for all of them. Now, if I want to do like I did with the others and make it full width, in this particular case, not too bad. I just need to come here in my style sheets that I created, my selectors, sorry, that I created, and get rid of that section here. And it should get rid, as they say, of the classes, but it's not necessarily that good. I realize that when I do that, since my section have already that applied to it, and it's what is selected right now, it will create some problems. So first of all, I will need to switch to my ID here, because I will not be able to switch back to my ID if I don't do that before I remove my elements. So of course you could create the class and then come back to that later on. I'm going to say collapse. I'll say, here we go. I'm going to be faster. All right, so let me just switch to that first. We don't necessarily need to delete the classes, but at least we need to change that back to the ID, because it won't know what to do with the ID. And if you ever do that, by the way, what I found is I just need to make the section back again on any of those, and then I will be able to come back and do that after. One thing also that is special with Oxygen is that you have the structure here with everything inside of it, and it just gave them random names like that. But it can be, what you can do is come here, click on that little menu here and rename them. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to manage that after. So I didn't take that into account for the time of the development, because of course not all of them have that. But it's really a good idea to do that. Start, if I can type, training today. Okay. Featured classes. All right, sorry for the phone ring. Okay, let's go back to that. Rename. This one was featured class. Meet the author. The owner, sorry. Owner, and finally I'm gonna rename that for footer. All right, so this is just a good idea to help structure. It's not required. All right, so now what I wanted to do is come here and just get rid of that section selector here. As you can see now, everything will go back to full width. So of course, if I save that and refresh my page, you'll see that now it is full width. All right, so now if I go with the mobile and tablet views. So as you can see here, we can always come to that. Let's go back to the editor, let's say. And here we have different screen sizes. We have way more than with the others, which most of the time have simply mobile and tablet. Here we can toggle lower than 1200, lower than 992, and so on. It says less than, and I want to write to the author, by the way, to Louis, about that, because it says less than 768, but it takes into account 768. So for example, for the iPad and portrait mode, it will be the same view as the mobile, which is not really what I want. So hopefully it will change that to be really less than 768 not taken into account. So if I select that, you see that it resizes. It resizes to way less than 768. It's not 768, but you can always move that if you want to have a better idea of what it will look like. Okay, so let's say that I want to change that here. So I want everything that you do here will be changed for that specific device here. So let's say we had a width of 560. We'll probably change that, but we also had a padding here. So I'm gonna keep, let's say, the same padding top for now, and just remove the one to be 20 instead on the left, and let's say something like that. And depending on the background image, if I want to leave it like that or not, let's say that I want to move that a little bit, I could come here and say, for example, minus, I don't know, 300. Whoops, I'm not on the right place, sorry. This is not where the image is here. This is where it is. So let's say, oops, minus 300. What does it look like? That isn't too bad. And of course, if I don't want the text to be like that, then I can come here and change the text here to say, well, I can change the overall box to be, let's say, and instead of 760, let's say 360. Yeah, that's a good. Instead of 560. And of course, depending on the size, then it might still overlap the image, of course, in some places. Oh no, just the image that will be cut, of course. All right, so for that here, this is not too bad, because now it's really the mobile view. Like I said, tablet view is not exactly like that. It will be like that instead. So it's in 3 column, and that's why, if you have seen me do that, I have simply said here that in less than 768, I want to be one on top of the other. So that's why below 768, it's like that. I could say less than 480, for example, but of course, in some places it's going to be really crushed up, as you can see. And by default, it's 992, which I think that it's way too less. And that's because, again, of the 768. So personally, I would change that to be less than 768. In other words, 767. Not 68 to be taken into account. But anyway, let's move it back like that. Okay, so that is still fine on tablet. Will be probably something around that. Oops, a bit more than that. Sorry. Come on. Okay, those 2 columns are all right as well, except that we have the lines here that are too big. So what I can do, I can come here and let's say for all my title, put something, well, I think we have 20. So if I say 0, well, that's not enough. Let's say minus 20 or 18 if I want to still have a little space. And that's why I have added a class to this text as well, featured text, because I knew that I wanted to come back here and do the same thing here. So I don't know if it's already 0, so let's say minus, I don't know, 7 or something or so. Should be enough, 7 or 8. Seems to be aligned pretty much. So that's perfectly fine here as well. Meet the owner, I could probably come here and again add some padding here. Let's say 20 on each side, because right now I think we have something like 40 on the left side, right side, sorry. And same thing here. Let's say probably 20 as well. Would be good. Of course, I could add some space there as well if I wanted to. And that's pretty good. Now, if I switch to a smaller screen size, let's say less than 768. Okay, now it will be for mobiles and so on. So if I do like I did for the others, this one here, I want to go back to 10 of padding here at the top, something like that. 20, the width will be probably 100%, and we can get rid of that. Here we go. that image here. Now we need to move a little with the alignment. So I'm not used to that flex element yet, so I think that if I try to do something like this, no, it doesn't work. I think we need to do that on the entire group itself or something like that. Sorry. If I say block, well, not necessarily. Flex is the default. Okay, but by default it stacks like that. Alright, now let me go back. Sorry, my mistake here. If I center that, everything should be centered. So I can leave it like that. That's fine. And my text here is left aligned. I can right align. I can leave it like that. Or if I really want to have that centered as well, I can come here and do that. Okay, this text is supposed to be smaller, by the way. So let's put 24. And of course now the section here is way too high, so let's change that to, let's say, 450. Whoops, sorry, not the width but the height. 450. That's pretty good. This looks great. And here we have a little problem here, so let's go like we did with the others. And at that size, on that screen size, let's say that we want to have a max width of 263, which is the size of the image. Of course, we want to change the border. So right now the border, we don't have a border on the top, on the left, sorry. So we want to add a border on the left for that screen size. 1 pixel solid. And we want to get rid of the one on the top, so 0, none, so no border on the top, so that's perfectly fine. Here, meet the owner. So again, I could simply say that this one will be, should work if I say child element centered. No. Okay, the image itself. Well, let's say another way to do that, it's simply to say that I want the margins auto on each side. So that will be faster to do so. I can add a little bit of margin on the bottom since it's too close. Okay, that's good. And of course, in this particular case here, we don't really see it, but I know that there's a border on the left and I want to get rid of that. So left border. 0, none. It's overkill, but just want to make sure that it works in every browser. So usually just 0 here would be enough. So like I said, it's a little bit overkill, but still works fine. All right, so now if I refresh that, test it, and like I said, because of that 768, we will have a little issue on the iPad. So hopefully they will correct that, because oops, what size here? I should put a little bit more than 450, but anyway. So the iPad, of course, like that, it's all right. But here, oh, we see the image repeat as well. So something bad here. Let's just change that for all the devices. Switch that to image no repeat, but I can simply say cover and it will say that as well automatically. Oops, sorry, I forgot to switch back to my all devices. Okay. Well, I'm doing something wrong here. Boom, 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 boom. I guess that I switched something by mistake. Okay, yeah, that's true. If I move that, I'm gonna have that problem here. So I better not move that, I guess. And I would have to find another solution here. That should be like that on the iPad, but it's 769 as you can see, so it's not exactly true. So that's how I would change that for mobile. Like I said, I hope that they will correct that little thing here about 768 and so on. Okay, now let's do our speed testing. So again, without any real surprise, the numbers are pretty close. Score is a little bit higher though, because as you can see there's more green marks, so less negative stuff, though I don't use a cache plugin or anything. So the total page size, I think it's bigger than what we have with Thrive Architect, but lower from memory than with Elementor, and the request is below Elementor for sure, probably below Thrive Architect as well, I think so. Same thing here, so 572, so 32 requests, so pretty good. I know that in the structure it outputs a code a little bit better because there's less nesting of elements inside div, but as you can see, performance great and so on, pretty similar from one to the other. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that. If you liked the video, of course, put a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to my channel so that you will know when there are new videos, and you will see the little bell icon tell you that there are new videos. So my aim is to create another one with Breezy and hopefully with DV and others as well. Thank you.